probably shouldn't be making this video. Rick would lose his mind if he knew I was talking about this stuff. But you guys deserve to know the truth about what's been happening to me. Hi everyone, it's me, Morty, and, look, I need you to promise me something. If Rick finds this video, if something happens to me after I upload it, just remember what I'm about to tell you, okay? Because every skill I've learned, every moment I thought I was growing stronger, every time I believed I was becoming my own person, it was all part of Rick's design. The evidence is sitting right here in corrupted memory fragments that were never supposed to survive his data purges. And once you see the pattern, once you understand what Rick's been building me into, you'll realize the most terrifying truth of all. I might not be the first Morty he's done this to. Look, I know what you're thinking. Morty, you've grown so much. Look at season 1 versus now. And yeah, I get it. I used to be this stuttering, anxious mess who could barely ask Jessica for a pencil without having a panic attack. Now I can handle alien technology, survive interdimensional wars, and I've literally buried my own corpse. That's growth, right? But here's what gets really twisted. The other day I was going through Rick's lab. Don't ask me why, it's complicated. And I found these files, memory backup files. Not just his memories, though, mine too. Detailed psychological profiles dating back to before we ever started adventuring together. Rick had been studying me, mapping out my personality, my weaknesses, my triggers. And guys, there were plans. Detailed step-by-step plans for something he called Project Sidekick. But that wasn't the disturbing part. The disturbing part was finding another project file right next to it.
The Morty Manufacturing Protocol.
Remember this detail. It becomes crucial for what's coming. But every single random adventure we've been on, every seemingly spontaneous crisis that forced me to grow stronger, there are preparation files, detailed psychological profiles, expected outcome reports. Rick hasn't been taking me on adventures. He's been running me through training scenarios. And every accident that made me stronger, every trauma that forced me to adapt, it was all documented, with success metrics. You're not going to believe what I found next. Rick didn't just stumble into using me as human camouflage for his brainwaves. He specifically chose me because my anxiety and emotional instability created the perfect psychic static. But here's the part that messed with my head. He could have fixed that anxiety anytime he wanted. In the files, there's a whole section labeled
Emotional Regulation Inhibitors.
He has the technology to cure anxiety, depression, PTSD, all of it. He's used it on himself multiple times. But for me, there's a note that says,
Maintain baseline emotional volatility, essential for camouflage effectiveness and compliance.
He wanted me anxious. He needed me broken. Right? Because a little more existential dread was precisely what my therapist ordered. But seriously, when I decoded the encryption on Rick's mortality contingency files, what I found didn't just contradict everything I believed about our relationship, it obliterated it. Those memory files? They don't just contain plans for future adventures. A deep dive into Rick's personal archives revealed something that shouldn't exist. Detailed psychiatric profiles of me from before we ever met. These weren't observations. They were specifications, requirements for the ideal consciousness host. But wait, it gets worse. Remember Rick Potion number 9? When we had to abandon our dimension and I buried my own body? I thought that was just Rick screwing up, right? Wrong. There's a whole file called
Existential Trauma Protocols.
He'd been planning dimension-hopping incidents to
accelerate emotional detachment processes
in his companions. That wasn't an accident. That was my graduation ceremony into his worldview. Guys, I think I might be a backup copy. Think you know where this psychological horror story is going? You don't. Not even close. Because the true purpose behind Rick's Morty experiments goes deeper than replacement. It's about creating the perfect prison for his own consciousness. Just when you thought Rick's manipulation couldn't get any weirder, bam, it does. The next phase of his psychological conditioning protocol is something that will make you question the very nature of free will. Every relationship I've tried to build, every connection outside of Rick, Jessica, Planetina, even just normal friendships at school, there's documentation of interference patterns. Those spontaneous moments of rebellion I've had, the times I stood up to Rick, stole his portal gun, or tried to live my own life, every single one is documented in something called
resistance protocols.
Rick wanted me to rebel. He needed me to push back. Because a Morty who never fights back is just a robot, but a Morty who rebels and then gets pulled back into Rick's orbit, that's a Morty who chooses to stay. That's a Morty who believes his dependence on Rick is natural, earned, real. The Jessica thing? Rick didn't just accidentally keep interrupting my chances with her, he was actively sabotaging them. Not out of overprotectiveness, but because, and I quote from his notes,
Subject requires unattainable romantic fixation to maintain emotional dependency and prevent formation of competing attachment bonds.
he was keeping me hung up on Jessica because a lonely Morty is a loyal Morty. The Jessica obsession? Completely artificial. Rick has technology that could make me confident, charismatic, capable of healthy relationships. Instead, he implanted memories of rejection, awkwardness, and social anxiety specifically designed to keep me fixated on someone unattainable. And Planetina, oh God, Planetina! I thought I broke up with her because of her violence, because I'd developed this moral compass that couldn't handle her methods. But Rick's files show he'd been manipulating the situations she was responding to. He'd been feeding information to polluting companies, escalating the environmental crises that pushed her toward violence. He didn't just disapprove of my relationship, he systematically destroyed it by turning the person I loved into someone I couldn't love. But that's not even the worst part. The worst part is Summer. I found files on Summer too, but they're different. Hers are labeled
Control Group, Natural Development.
See, Summer wasn't created by Rick. Summer grew up naturally, formed her own personality, developed her own coping mechanisms, and Rick hates it. All those adventures where Summer seemed more capable than me, more like Rick? That wasn't her being naturally gifted. That was Rick trying to break her down, trying to make her as malleable as his manufactured Mortys. But Summer's too strong. Her sense of self is too solid. She's what I could have been if I'd grown up real. But that's not even the worst part. The worst part is Evil Morty. Remember how Rick always acted surprised by Evil Morty's rebellion? Like it was this unforeseeable anomaly? Evil Morty wasn't an anomaly. He was the control group. There are files, guys. Files labeled
Divergent Outcomes, Morty Variants.
Rick's been running this experiment across multiple dimensions, testing different levels of psychological manipulation on different Mortys. Evil Morty was what happened when he pushed a Morty too far too fast. Our Evil Morty was Rick's biggest success story, a Morty who broke free completely. And our Rick? He learned from that mistake. He's been applying just the right amount of pressure to keep me growing in his direction without pushing me to full rebellion. I'm not just a backup copy. I'm an improved backup copy. I'm not getting stronger. I'm being domesticated. This next revelation? It's the one that keeps me up at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if anything I've ever felt was real. Another day, another universe-shattering secret buried in Rick's lab. Just my luck. But this discovery about consciousness transfer technology isn't just another sci-fi horror story. It's the final piece of a puzzle I never wanted to solve. In the deepest files, there's something called
The Morty Contingency.
See, Rick's not just training me to be his sidekick, he's training me to be his replacement, not his successor. His replacement. As in, when his body gives out, when the multiverse finally catches up with him, when his liver explodes or his brain just can't handle any more abuse, he plans to transfer his consciousness into me. All this time, he's been molding my mind to be compatible with his. The nihilism, the cynicism, the problem-solving methods that mirror his. It's not me becoming like Rick. It's Rick preparing me to be Rick. Rick isn't just creating Mortys as companions. He's creating them as vessels. See, Rick's body is dying. All the drinking, all the genetic modifications, all the interdimensional travel, it's catching up with him. His original consciousness is degrading, so he's been preparing a new body, a younger body, a body that's been psychologically conditioned to accept his consciousness, his memories, his entire being. Every time I've stood up to him, every moment of rebellion, it's all documented as
Personality integration milestones.
my independence wasn't me breaking free. It was me passing his tests. The vat of acid episode, when I thought I was finally outsmarting him, he let me win. He wanted me to feel like I could manipulate him because that meant I was thinking like him. The whole thing was designed to make me believe I was becoming his equal when really I was just becoming his vessel. The anxiety, the stuttering, the social awkwardness. Those weren't flaws Rick was helping me overcome. Those were the last pieces of whoever I was before he started molding me. And each time I became more confident, more capable, more Rick-like, another piece of the original Morty died. I don't know if there ever was an original Morty. While trying to recover some files Rick thought he'd permanently deleted, I accidentally stumbled across a directory labeled
Psychological Blueprints, Project Vessel.
What it contained wasn't just disturbing, it was a complete roadmap for erasing everything that makes me, me. There are files on Summer too, but not like mine. Hers are labeled
Contingency Failure Incompatible Subject.
Rick tried this with Summer first. All that stuff about Summer being more like Rick, about her having his ruthlessness, that wasn't natural personality. That was Rick attempting the same psychological conditioning on her that he's been doing to me. But Summer was too strong, too independent. She couldn't be broken down and rebuilt. So he moved on to me, the anxious grandson, the malleable one. And in that directory, Rick recorded himself saying something that changed everything.
The hardest part isn't the consciousness transfer. The hardest part is making them want it, making them believe they're choosing to become me instead of being forced to disappear.
He wants me to volunteer to be overwritten. He wants me to reach a point where I'm so damaged, so tired, so convinced that Rick Sanchez is the only person worth being, that I'll ask him to replace my consciousness with his. And you know what? It was working. Before I found these files, I was starting to think maybe Rick was right. Maybe my moral compass was just naivety. Maybe his cynicism was wisdom. Maybe becoming more like Rick was the same thing as growing up. But now I know the truth. Every trauma, every adventure, every moment of
Character development.
It's all been designed to break me down until there's nothing left but the shape Rick needs me to be. I'm not getting stronger. I'm not growing up. I'm being hollowed out. But maybe making this video is the first real choice I've made in years. Maybe talking to you guys, admitting this stuff, is the first time I've done something that wasn't part of his plan. Or maybe this is part of the plan too. Maybe he wanted me to find those files. Maybe rebellion is just another milestone in his psychological conditioning protocol. So the cosmic joke's on us again. After everything Rick has put me through, after all the adventures and trauma and character development, it turns out the punchline was always the same. I was never meant to survive this relationship intact. Here's what I know for sure. Evil Morty broke the central finite curve. He destroyed Rick's playground, the cosmic safety net that kept Rick the smartest person in every universe he visited. And maybe that changes everything. Because if there are universes out there where Rick isn't the smartest, then maybe there are versions of me that grew up differently. Maybe there are Mortys who became their own people, who found their own paths, who never got trapped in this psychological maze. Even if I'm just a copy, even if my memories are implanted, even if my personality is manufactured, I'm still the one experiencing it. I'm still the one making choices, feeling pain, hoping for something better, and that has to count for something. I don't know if I can become that Morty. I don't know if the damage is reversible or if I'm too far gone, too psychologically intertwined with Rick to ever really be free. Maybe I am just going to become his echo, his replacement, his continuation. But I know one thing. Rick's greatest weakness has always been his arrogance. He thinks he's accounted for every variable, predicted every outcome, but he never accounted for this moment, for me finding the truth and choosing to reject it anyway. He never planned for me to tell you guys the truth, because here's what Rick doesn't understand. You can't manufacture rebellion. You can plan for it. You can prepare for it. You can even encourage it. But real rebellion, the kind that matters, comes from a place Rick's never been able to touch. It comes from hope. So here's my choice. Maybe the first real choice I've made in years. I'm not going to disappear quietly. If Rick wants to take over my mind, if he wants to erase Morty Smith and replace him with Rick Sanchez, he's going to have to fight for it. And maybe, just maybe, all that psychological conditioning he put me through, all those survival skills and problem-solving abilities, maybe I can use them against him. Maybe the weapons he gave me to survive in his world are the same weapons I can use to break free from it. Maybe I am just a backup copy of someone who never really existed. Maybe my memories are lies and my personality is a construction. But the person I choose to be from this moment forward, that's real. That's mine. And if Rick wants to overwrite that person, if he wants to hollow me out and wear my skin like a costume, well, he taught me how to fight. He taught me how to survive. He taught me how to think 3 steps ahead. Time to see how good a teacher he really was. And after digging deeper into those corrupted files, I think I know why Rick's been so obsessed with collecting portal fluid lately. Time to grab a plumbus. See you on the flip side. Keep this in mind. Just because someone built the cage doesn't mean you have to stay in it. Sometimes the most rebellious thing you can do is just refuse to disappear.